Hi, I'm John Shribs, and I'm a retired teacher and a scientist, and I've been researching electric transport vehicles for my personal use and also for future investments. And I found that I have purchased an electric bike, and I have a Nissan Leaf, and I've been using these quite a bit around town for a couple of years now, and I really love my electric transport. But what about the future? So I've looked here at the future, and a lot of science fiction movies have considered various options of transport that we may want to look at. And what's going on here? We've got bicycles that have been upgraded with a little bit more energy and a little bit more efficiency, so you can get there, go further, a little bit faster, a little easier, and do a few more things on your bicycle than you could before with this little bit of energy boost from the batteries. In electric cars, we've been able to now have lots of models of current vehicles that are combustion based and now move them into electrification. But now that we have this system and this mindset that we can use electric vehicles, there's a gap between the slow-paced bicycles, fast-paced cars, and what is going to be happening here in the middle. I think there's a future here that maybe we're time and ready to go for this future. And I call it the bicycle car gap. And it's about to be filled. Lots of innovators are starting to work on this. Currently, we have 3 levels of transport. We have walking, which is average about 2 miles per hour. It's free. We have bicycles that have been used traditionally for well over 100 years. And these tend to go an average of 10 to 15 miles per hour. They're, again, only 2.5 feet wide, about 28 to 30 inches on handlebars, reasonably priced, easy to get around town, but not a big option here in the US. It's much more popular in Europe and China and other places. But bikes aren't really popular here because of some of the safety issues around, and also just folks are just trying to get there quickly with their cars, and it's so easy here in the US to use cars to get where you want to go. And then we have the cars and trucks, which go very fast, freeway speeds. Folks are now pushing 65, 70, even 75 miles per hour on our freeways, pretty high speeds on our parkways and main corridors. And so they tend to be going at least 30 miles an hour on city streets and upwards of 40, even 50 on some of our corridor roads. That's going on. And the price tags jump all the way up to 20,000 plus, and not unheard of to have a $60,000 car. And even the trucks now even go above and beyond that. But there's a gap here that's about to be filled. The electric bikes, and there's a bunch of different hybrids on, combining both human and electric, or that are basically 2, 3, and 4 wheeled, with and without cargo capacities with trailers and the like. And this ability to move up and do more with bicycles in the bike lane. So the speeds are increasing for there. I've got my electric bike, and I can go easily 15 to 20 miles an hour on a stretch where on my regular bike I can only go 10 to 15. But I'm in the bike lane. I have the standard 2.5 feet handlebars width and trailer, but some of these new hybrids are now going up to 3 foot, especially the quads and trikes. And the price ranges are still fairly low. You can get a nice e-bike for $800 off the internet, and probably about $2,000 to $3,000 get you a really nice electric bike, and maybe with various cargo capacities on it. Then we also have a bunch of electric gap microcars that are starting to come up. They've been around for 10 years. They've been promoted. They've been in shows, lots of designs and diagrams. A few have come into production. And they generally go 0 to 60 miles per hour. They're trying to get above that at the moment so they get the freeway speeds, but these microcars tend to be a little bit slower from all around the world because they don't need those high speeds around the world. So 25 to 50 mile an hour kind of car range. They're mostly designed for cities, and they can be as small as 3 feet wide and up to 5 feet wide. And they, again, much lower cost than cars. There's one car in China that's up to $6,000, and there's some that's going up to $15,000 for the mini cars, still below your car and truck, and usually designed for 1, 2, 3, a maximum of 4 people in that vehicle, but usually 2 folks on average for most of these vehicles. We had electric vehicles even back in 1884. In fact, they were probably more popular and possible back then than the gasoline, because gasoline was just being discovered and refined for uses. And setting up some vehicles, the Model T then got made and produced, which took over the marketplace, and we became gasoline. The next car that was electric that entered the marketplace was back in GM, the EV1, which had lead acid batteries in it, so it did not have a great range, did not have great speed, but was very popular. This was leased, but GM ran it for a couple of years. But as soon as that first 3-year lease was up, they basically removed it from the marketplace. In fact, if you look at the marketing that was done on this, it was all negative, dark, would make you want to hate to use this vehicle. Running down his dark storms with thunders, I remember advertising on this. So they actually marketed this to get rid of it, to show that, yeah, we tried and failed. And I think that was one of the purposes of producing this out there, to demonstrate that this is not worthy of even consideration. So that was like a marketing technique to reduce the electricity use in vehicles. But finally, we came along with nickel metal halide batteries, which were a little bit better. The Honda Insight actually did pretty well. They ran it for several years, but because they ran into problems with some of the mechanical, technical problems, some of the parts needed to get recalled in. It was only 2-seater and a limited market, and they didn't go really fast, and they had limited miles on it. So it got kind of dropped. The marketing just stopped on it, and they just kind of gave up on it, and rather than pushing it forward. But in 2010, the Nissan Leaf, one of the first, and we still have the Nissan Leaf in the marketplace, because the lithium battery came in, and Nissan was the first one that was successful producing a production car that was good in the marketplace. It was 4 doors, 5 seats possible, had enough trunk space, looked like a car, could go the same speed as a car, could go freeway speeds. And so that was a marketplace that worked. So that continued on, and that established a market, and that it was the largest volume electric car for long years until Tesla came along. So they've failed for a variety of reasons: of market acceptance, mechanical things, technical things, batteries, but putting it all together. But finally, we have vehicles that have lithium batteries that work and function, and now accepted in the marketplace. So current vehicles that we have, the Nissan Leaf, which I have driven for 4 years now, and we use it for 90% of our time, and works really well for us, for all around town and for short city-to-city distances. We do fine going here Petaluma to Napa or Sonoma or over to the coast. But a lot of friends now have Teslas, and they really love their Teslas. They go a little further, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, a little pricier. But the folks really love their Teslas. The bolts come in with the Chevy, and it's a smaller and lighter than the Nissan Leaf. It has greater distance, up to 200 miles, and I have friends with that, and they're really happy with their vehicle. And the new truck that's come on with Ford, the F-150 Lightning, they're now moving up in the size and what we can power with electricity. And then, of course, Harley-Davidson even got in with the motorcycles and produced those. But that still does not have the full range to really be competitive and get people to move over into electric motorcycles from their gas-powered motorcycles. Not quite having the range. It has the power, has the speed, has the sprint capacity, but just does not have the range. And when they get up to more 200, 300 mile range per drive, but these are marketed right now for the 100 mile and less range folks. So what are some of the new players that are coming on the market now? We have Lucid that is now selling, but they're now only in the hundreds of productions rather than the thousands, but they are competing with Tesla, high-end $70,000 car. So if you're just doing an apple to apple with the Tesla high-end, this actually is faster, smoother, better, more luxurious, and being marketed. And these cars, as soon as they're produced, are being snapped up. You can go to 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, which is very, very fast. That's now getting into dragster territory. A range of 520 miles on a single charge. So huge capacity here, very fast, luxurious, competitive price range for the luxury cars. And so these are going to sell like hotcakes. They do have some problems. We'll talk a little bit about some of the failures that several of these startups have been having lately, and getting into the marketplace. Some hopefully are going to be successful. So Lucid's on its way and is already producing. Rivian has already started producing, again, a higher end pickup truck competing with the F-150 Lightning, and it's a little bit more upscale, not a real rugged truck for towing and for farming, but more or less for camping and for light duty type things, more of a luxury type truck, and that was going to work really well in that marketplace. Not quite up to full towing capacity yet, but hopefully soon. Aptera is back again. They resurrected, and now they're past alpha, now they're into beta production, and pretty soon I've put my application in to get a car, put my deposit down. I've even invested in Aptera to get this vehicle. I think this is going to be a great replacement for my Nissan Leaf. It's a reasonable price at $30,000. It has plenty of speed at 110 mile per hour, 1,000 mile range if you so wish, but you can various things from 200, 400, 800, and 1,000 mile range. Battery packs will be sold separately so that you can have a choice of range because this batteries add a lot of weight and cost to the vehicle. And these are still very fast, 3.5 seconds, 0 to 60. This is the most aerodynamic car that's possible that you can hold two passengers with. Designed basically on the dolphin fish and a fuselage of a plane, and Aptera basically is flightless, wingless flight capacity. But it only takes two people. So again, a limited market. It's going to be niche marketed, not for the entire U.S. population. Another thing I'm watching, the Helix is now in alpha production or alpha testing, and not quite to beta yet, but they're almost there. And this vehicle is starting off with design. In fact, all these are designed from a fresh start. Now, it's using electric batteries and drivetrains as a beginnings, and then working around the human 1, 2, 3, or 4 passengers and functionality. So all these vehicles have been designed with a fresh start. Which has been a good thing because we have opportunity to create a vehicle not in copying or translating from a current car, but actually designing around the current and make it much more efficient this way. So the Helix is for a trike is going to be again very aerodynamic, very stable. It tilts, does all sorts of fun, fast things. It'll be fun to drive. It can go 100 miles an hour, has a 200-mile range. 2 people can fit. Usually it's one person with either cargo or a person behind with a small bag, maybe in the very back trunk there. But it's only 3 foot wide, and so you can actually put 2 in a normal car lane. And again, very reasonably fast, 6.4 seconds for 0 to 60. Plenty of pickup to get on the freeways to go. And this is something I've also looked forward to driving down for my personal use here in town and on the freeways, get around. Now what's interesting is actually the highest selling electric car in the world now is the Wuling Hongguang Mini EV in China. In the last 2 years, production they're going like gangbusters right now. They've produced over 500,000 cars now, and they're easily surpassing the Tesla's 100,000 car production capacity, and it is very, very popular. And especially the youth in China are gobbling these things up. And what they found most interesting, lots of YouTubes about customization. There's a whole hobbyist thing going on, a cultural thing amongst the youth, how they can customize these things. So custom shops are getting these in as soon as they're bought, putting colors and things all over these outside and inside. It's a whole cultural thing happening in China. These things have 110-mile range, which is plenty for most of the young folks in China. They take public transport if they need to get from city to city, and then you can do ride sharing if you need to once you get to a different city. But for 95 to 98% of use, personal use for young families, these hold 4 people, so 2 adults and 2 kids easily. It gets plenty of speed for even up to the freeways there in China. So That's one of the reasons this has become extremely popular. It's much shorter than our cars. It's less wide than our cars. It's only 4 foot wide, maybe 4.5 foot wide. And these things are going to become upgraded shortly. So there's more range that's going to go in, maybe 150, maybe even 200-mile ranges here in the next go around is what I've seen. A little higher speeds, maybe even get up to 70 miles an hour freeway speeds. Again, but just 4 people would be in this vehicle. So again, trying to meet that. Again, only 2 doors, so you have to climb in and out because they are fairly short. Now, amongst the e-bikes, you have lots of options. Almost every type of e-bike has now been converted to electric in means. Even so, at Costco, you can get your child's an e-bike for about $400. And I've seen a couple of these running around town, and I expect these to become very, very popular amongst the younger kids, going to elementary school, getting there and back, and get them. And once you have them trained on this and using these, that's going to create a whole generation of people that are going to love electrified transport. For adults who are on trains and going through folding bikes, you can put them in your car. So they're running about $1,200 each. Then you have your standard, your city bikes, which on the internet you can get a model directly, maybe $800 to maybe $1,200. Probably wouldn't recommend a direct internet purchase that is from China at this time because of the parts acquisition in case something breaks down. There are a lot of brands that are not serviceable here. That's why there's other brands here that have productions in the U.S. Rad City, Blix, Magnum, and Aberton are being produced here in the U.S. and parts are much more easily available. And you can find, at least here in Petaluma and Santa Rosa areas, we have folks that will actually maintain, can get the parts and maintain and your electric bikes. So that's really nice to have these brands here easily accessible and repairable. So service is really a critical part of these electric bikes. Just make sure you can get them all the parts that you might need in case anything breaks. So on the internet, but these bikes, generally the price on most of these bikes, fat tire bikes, mountain bikes, even cargo bikes, for these brands are being produced in the range of about $2,000 plus or minus $200, $300. And they'll get you a fairly nice, decent, low-end electric bike that's very substantial. And to get you to do what you want to do. Now there's 2 higher ends. Of course, road bikes. Hey, if you just want to go further faster on your road bike, that's a smaller market because most folks on road bikes like to be totally human. But for some of the folks that are getting a little older, want to keep up with the younger folks, hey, there's a battery inside these tubes, a mid motor rather than a tire motor. Most of these have rear wheel motors on them on the back end here. This is now a mid motor, which is a little bit more expensive, a little smoother, a little bit more efficient. So it doesn't require as much of a battery. And the power, and I understand it works a little bit better for transitioning your gears and power. So you put this on a high-end road bike, $8,000, and you can scream down the road and keep up with those 20-year-olds. Then on the other end, they're starting to move toward motorcycles. So here's you have 2 wheels that are both motorized, 750 watts scrambler. In fact, they even require helmets, a full motorcycle helmet when you're riding on these guys. Now they're usually sold and have limited capacities of about the 20 mile per hour to keep them in the bike lanes, but they can easily be switched up to 30, 35 miles per hour on these bikes that are very close to almost small motorcycles. And so these are going to get shifted up a little bit in time and into scooters and motorcycles as we meet that marketplace in there, that this middle ground, this gap ground. So bicycles are going to head toward motorcycles. That's one of the gaps that's going to get filled here shortly. Now there's various things here on information. I've got that there are a little bit heavier. There are, when you've got a 10-pound battery and a 10-pound motor, the batteries cost about $600 for replacement. The motors are 250, 500, and 750 watts, depending upon where you are in the world. Europe puts limits on 250 because they want to keep the bicycles a little bit slower paced, and so they mix in with the regular bikes because they have lots of bike lanes are full of bikes. So I'll talk about how ride sharing, that we have 750 watts here in the US, limit capacity, because we don't have the large volume of bikes going down competing with pedestrians so much. And so we're allowed to go a little bit faster, a little bit stronger with our 750 watt motors. Generally in the bike lanes, they have a 20 mile per hour limit on when you have assisted or full throttle or electric only. But when you're assisted and can pedal along with it, we have limits of 28 miles per hour in most of the states. And so this is the limits of working in the bike lane. As soon as you go above this, you start needing to wear regular motorcycle helmets versus bicycle helmets, and you start need to be getting into now the car lane capacity and out of the bike lane because of possible conflicts with the slower vehicles in the bike lanes. And the other thing that's happening with electric bikes, once everyone gets used to feeling, oh yeah, I can go further, faster, stronger, then electric bikes are going to be used for more things. So transporting. So here's an example of services where you would just have takeout. So you can pack up a cargo bike, put something on the front, put something in the back, add stuff on a trailer. And so you can do 10, 15 deliveries on a single route around town, and then come on back, refill, and go back out again. And so for takeout transport, if in towns that are congested, you can actually get there as fast on this bicycle than you can some cars. So this is going to grow in popularity amongst the takeout crowd. We have folks that have been riding on bicycles and taking their kids around in the trailers, but with an electric bike, it's faster, easier, you go a longer distance, a lot more fun. So those are going to get more popular for this. Even hunters are, there's special bikes, a company that's actually making bikes for hunters with trailers designed to go over into rougher areas, into the backwoods areas. So these are a little bit heavier, a little bit tougher designs, a little bit more expensive. But for these guys, they love to pull in their pig that they've captured with their arrows using archery hunting. And so you find a lot of country folks are moving in this. Also, they're showing up on some of the boatings and kayaks. You're seeing electric motors showing up in small boats, fishing boats, and kayaks, human-powered boats. So that is going to also transform. And here I am over here, and I built a trailer specific for my kayak so I can get down there to the river. And I've done this on roads, and I've got it under 3 foot wide for my trailer here. And this is a trailer design that I put together. It did work. However, it's poorly designed. I have the wheels too far back, and there's too much weight on the rack up here. So I've had to redesign this. I've cut this in half and put the wheels much closer in, much more in front, and much more balanced now. So instead of having a 60 pounds on the rack, it's now only about 5 pounds now coming down onto the rack on the bicycle. So I've been able to modify a trailer. So lots of folks are working on these trailer systems and capacities. So in all these different trailers you have are going to be growing in popularity and what you can transport around. And then so you have bicycles with a lot more gear and a lot more width going down the road here, down in the future, I think is what I'm predicting. And particularly in cargo bikes, this is probably one of the most popular cargo bikes that are going to hit the market. They're just growing in popularity. Rad City has their cargo bike, which is currently the most popular one because it's reasonably priced at a little over $2,000. The Blix is competing with them at the same price point, and a very similar design, but they're boasting a little higher capacity. They've got this Blix Paca Genie can carry 200 pounds of cargo on top of, besides your personal weight of 200 to 250 pounds. So there's usually a 400 pound capacity total that's designed for these bikes, and they've got a system where you can modify the cargo 200 different ways, different rack systems going on. And these are starting to sell. I'm starting to see these around town, and I've seen a couple in the bike shops. So this is going to become very popular for transfer. You can get two children on the back, or you can put cargo, and you can easily move these things around. You just little hand turn knob screws. You can put seats on, take seats off, put in your bags, put on the cargoes. So you can transform this very quickly within less than 5 minutes and go to do what you need to do for all the cargo that you're possibly taking down the road. So lots of possibilities here to transform our local trips that are under 5 miles. And with electric, and this particular bike competing with the Rad City bike is a single motor, a single battery, excuse me. It is a single battery here, but you can add a second battery on the back end here, so you can actually increase the range of this bike to 80 miles. So having two batteries, each battery gets you up to 40 miles going at reasonable pace, anywhere from 25 to 30 miles an hour up to 40 miles total on a single battery. But with two batteries, you can get up to an 80-mile range, so for all day long. So someone that is, again, in takeout mode for stores can hire 16 to 18-year-olds to get on their bikes to transport their pizzas or their takeout food or even small packages and get them moved around town very quickly with a small workforce that's pretty cheap. And taking up to 200 pounds of cargo at any time on any trip. So lots of possibilities here to transform our whole takeout services from cars into bicycles. Which brings us to small electric transports. So now we have skateboards that are electrified. We've had scooters for a little while. You have the stand-up scooters. And they work for the smaller kids. For larger adults, they get a little harder to balance, and so we have for the adults a little larger wheels, a sit down, a little carrying capacity, and so these can scoot around, get you 10 to 20 miles on these guys pretty quickly within the bike lanes. And then we can talk about some of the ride share and rules of the road type situations. Scooters are being used in all sorts of ride share situations in Europe and other towns around the world. So scooters that like this or a little beefier are used in those ride share programs right from the train stations. So folks can go from there to within a mile to their workplace. And so we can get a whole workforce that is on public transport and ride share with these types of scooters going in, or bicycles. Now there's other for kids. There's these single-wheeled unicycles that you can stand on either front to back or side to side from the same company. InMotion produces both of these, and they can be riding around, and these have, let's say, a 10-mile capacity, so you can get to and from school easily, as well as your skateboards now. And don't know quite what to do with this 9-bot, but you have little go-kart styles, and they are pretty quick and fast and competing now with the gas-powered ones that are going around. So these are mostly for fun, but where do they belong on our roads and pathways and bicycles if kids are now driving these little go-karts around? This is a vehicle that I had for 10 years. It's an extreme scooter that was lead acid battery, but they're now lithium. But these have all, that's been dropped out of their line, out of the extreme line. They're now doing mostly just little scooters and also moving up into motorcycles. But this was dropped, but Vespa and Piaggio are producing electric scooters now, lithium-based batteries, getting very popular there in Europe and other places of the world. So here's some problems. Rules of the road. So when you have bicycles, pedestrians, and these vehicles going down the same paths at different speeds, with different balances, different aged people, from the young to the very old, then how are we going to deal with each other on our walkways, our pathways, our bike lanes? What grade of helmet needs to be used, either on the scooters, what's required versus recommended, everything from your smaller bicycle kid helmets to the larger motorcycle style helmets, because as the speeds get higher and higher. So right now we have some rules about helmets, but you need to always look at the safety. Age limits of how young can you be to ride these scooters around, or how old or how large you can be and be moving these scooters around, especially on sidewalks. Lots of complaints from pedestrians from scooters kind of running them over. What type of speed limits, because these are going to get faster and faster and more range on them with improvements down the line. And then for the rideshare programs, how can they be used at our train stations and our bus stations to move around town pretty easily if this becomes much more of a common way of moving from your public transport to your destinations. Which next brings us up one scale to our velomobiles. And these tend to be not so popular in the past, mostly all human powered in the past. So this Quattro Velo from the Netherlands is a high-end $8,000 shell here for this bicycle. It's quad. It's got 4 wheels on it. However, it can go 80 miles per hour from a standstill. And so it's very fast. You can get up to speed very fast and get around and get a fair amount of distance. So this is used as a high-end model for high speed, but is very expensive, and there's still lots of material and size to this thing. That's very aerodynamic. So folks are now making smaller things and electrifying. So one with a Cabrio Velo, which is you can actually enclose. It's a little bit smaller, and it was also very quick. This is a business that was moved into Italy, was producing, but didn't quite get the financing gone. And there's some startups that we can talk about having their troubles, both in the smaller vehicles and the larger vehicles of financing, marketplace, getting acceptance, getting in. And some of these have been a little bit too early for our marketing and for acceptance. But for those that use these, they love these vehicles. Folks, the hobbyists who get these and use them love these types of vehicles. So here in Italy, we have the Cabrio Velo. Now it's called the Tricycle in England, which is a little bit more upright, a little easier to get around. There's a lot more rain in England and Scotland, and so they want to produce a dry vehicle. So it's called the Tricycle, and that's becoming popular over there. And the Mulsanne in France, which actually has solar powered on the rooftop up here, so you can charge up while you're riding around or when it's parked outdoors. And you can actually have cargo back here as well, your battery and cargo, and you have space behind there again for transporting yourself and goods around. So those little ice cream bicycles that you see going around, when you electrify them and put them in quads like this, a lot faster going down, and again, you're now heading toward a 3-foot width rather than your 2.5 foot width here. There's design still just human powered straight up on how to hood you, and there's lots of designs out there that have been proposed. This is one I liked, everything, but now they're starting to get electrified, and there's a new one that's coming down that's just starting to be sold called the Iris in England. And so you have a canopy that actually flips up, and this is a tricycle with 2 wheels in the front, 1 in the wheel back. Another very similar one that's being produced is the Pod Bike in Denmark. And this is where the plastic acrylic cover completely pops up. You climb on into it, put the top down, and the seats are heated. You've got speedometers, you've got mirrors. It's like a mini car, and it's electrified, but with bicycle wheels. So not quite road worthy for high speeds because of the potholes and the like, and how it fits. So this thing can go 20, 25 miles an hour easily with human powered as well as electric. So these may become very popular just to get to and from places in all types of weather. So when you want to weatherize yourself, and so this is a whole new class of vehicle that may come up. We'll see how people accept these, if they become popular or not. The price is coming down. So instead of the $8,000, the $6,000 for these in prior days with electrical, they're getting down to $2,000. And here's one, the Elf, is now being produced in Arizona, and it's getting popular down there. It's being marketed, it's working. So basically it's a trike with 2 wheels in front, 1 wheel in the back, the ELF, it's electrified, and so you can get a pretty good speeds. It's all for the bike lane, and it's open space here, but you can get them even with electric seats. I think you can get that as an add-on if you want. And then there's a full electric, the Leaf, L-E-F, down here in the Netherlands, has been produced with a small wheel in front, 2 wheels in the back, completely enclosed. You lift this up, you climb in, you sit down, and it's like driving a little car. It's meant for the bike lane. It only goes 15 to 20 miles an hour, but you can get around and put 2 or 3 of these in a normal car parking space. So for shorter commutes of under 20 miles, 30 miles, these may become very popular there, and they're gaining some traction there in the Netherlands. And hopefully they'll start producing and spreading out around the world. So there's some options here. In the US, Denmark, England, Netherlands, these are all being niche markets now that I believe are going to be growing much more so in the future. And there's even some attempts to actually upgrade even further. So when these are called hybrid pedal cars, and the City Q is being sold and produced in Estonia and Norway. The biohybrids were being produced in Germany, but recently the company, again for startup reasons for both financing, market acceptance, getting enough production going. The company didn't quite make it, and they're no longer being produced, but there's still some around. But this is showing the possibilities here. So you have a quad vehicle, you sit in it. There's 3 or 4 different models that the biohybrid had, from cargo to passenger. Here's one with 2 passengers to get around town. You can see that you pedal up front here, and here you have another person with the city cube. You're pedaling almost like a bicycle. And again, your speeds can be anywhere up to 30 miles an hour on these vehicles. A pretty good range. You can work all day long, maybe 50 miles. They got some batteries packs all underneath that's laid down to a low center of gravity, pretty stable. They could use it for cargo. They can be used for passenger. They can be used in various ways. There's lots of different designs. But the trick here is when you pedal, you don't pedal the motor. You release the human power from the actual motion of the vehicle. Your pedaling charges the battery, as well as you put solar panels all over the top too, if you like, as a little add-on. And so by pedaling, you can pedal at any speed that you want. Does not affect your actual speed of the car, because it's all electric motor. And so when you disengage the actual chains involved from human power to the motor and trying to combine that electricity, so this sets it up in a different hybrid motion, electric motor, and then you charge up the motor with your bicycling capacity, human power. So this is another unique market, and I think could possibly grow very well. The City Q seems to be working well. They're selling. They're being very successful there in all type of weather conditions. They can even enclose. They can put doors on this and completely enclose in case it gets too cold out there. There are a variety of handicap vehicles that are available now, have been for a while, but they're all getting faster and they're all getting better. So you see them going around. Do they belong in the bike lanes, bike trails, car lanes, sidewalks? Right now they're mostly on sidewalks because they have to go real slow. They're up to 3 feet, 2.5 to 3 feet wide. So can they be more like a motorcycle and get around in the bike lanes? This vehicle is only 30 miles an hour and designed for bike lanes, but you can actually upgrade this a little bit into motorcycle capacity. You have chairs, specialized chairs that are a little bit more stable, a little easier to get around. Again, slower speeds, but there's more range, more speed, more power entering these vehicles all the time. You have bicycles, tricycles that have carrying capacity both for cargo. If you're a little unstable or getting a little older and need a little bit of help, it has a much bigger battery here to help you along. It's geared a little bit lower, slower speeds, fat tires for comfort. So these vehicles are, I've seen a few of these being sold around town, and but still they're on sidewalks. So you now have a 2.5 to 3 foot wide vehicle that is now going down on sidewalks. So okay, how do they deal with pedestrians? You have a vehicle here where you put a handicapped person in the front, or even a passenger in the front who can sit comfortably, who's just kind of touring around. And you can put it on a bicycle, and this model is being produced, I think, in Asia, and there should be electrified. They're currently upgrading this to electrification, but this is to get people around as little taxis, even, as well as for the handicapped. Now here in the US, we have an entrepreneur in Riverside, California, who is producing the Chariot, which is a mini car where you take your wheelchair, you can just roll right into the back end of it, and you can have a different levels. So it's set up so you can go off curbs, you can go down flat from a street or off of a curb or a driveway. So this goes up and down in various ways. So you could, with the hydraulics, so you can take your wheelchair, you can get up into it, just push right into it. It's all hand operated. Like several of the handicapped cars, along with the use of autopilot with Tesla's got added in here. So, but these are again going to be a little bit slower. They're only designed to go with like 30 miles an hour top speed, not the highest range because they're a little bit heavier. They're carrying extra cargo weight, but enough to get around town. So there's a huge market possibilities here when you're putting in just pull your wheelchair, accessibility, getting into a vehicle, pull right into it and just drive right off. Gives this huge independence capacity here. I think these are going to become very popular, but you have to put a slow sign on the back, just like they do over there in Pennsylvania for some of the horse-drawn vehicles. that are going down the road and have to put your signs on and say, hey, slow vehicle, don't go down the road. And we have to learn to live with these on our roads. That changes some of the share ride or sharing the road issues that we need to come up with. So sharing the road issues is going to be a possible problem we need to solve and get set up so that these are safe on our roads. Okay, that brings me a step up. Now here we come into the true gap vehicles. These are going to be the mini cars. They can take a capacity of 1, 2 people, even up to 4 people in these mini cars. And China's already got the one that is always ready for freeway speeds. So so a little larger capacity, a little higher speeds, and then all the way down to single passengers that are quads. Most of these are tricycles. Try to reduce the weight down so that they can increase their range and still have stability at high speeds. So some of these are easily can go 60 miles an hour. They're very stable up to 60 miles. The Chariot from Poland, it actually tilts back and forth, so it gives you the ability to kind of play around corners. The wheels go in and out. So when you're on high speeds, the wheels come out for stability. But when you need to park it in a tight space, the wheels can come in and you can just narrowly put it into a tight parking space if you're in a congested city. So I really believe this Chariot is going to become very popular there in Poland and in East Asia, East Europe, and continue on from there. The iRoad. Okay, this is Toyota. Toyota produces the iRoad. They've had this ready for several years now, multiple colors ready to go, and they're waiting for the marketplace to change so that they become much more acceptable. 2 wheels in the front, 1 wheel in the back, 2 people back to back with a little bit of cargo space. Again, just a round the town vehicle. And these vehicles, for all of these, what are some of the things that we're looking for? Greater than 60 miles per hour. Can they get past it? Can they get at least onto the freeway if it's within the city and get from here to there? 100-mile range is plenty to get here and there for most city folks that are going just in town, not long trips. So 100-mile range works fine for me. 90% of our driving is done with our electric Leaf, and we can go over 70 miles an hour on the freeway. But heck, these vehicles, if we just slow the traffic down on freeways, maybe that might be acceptable in the future. These cars are less than 6 foot long, so that they can actually back into instead of parallel parking, you just back in and you're less than 6 feet long. And most cars are 6 feet wide, so you can actually back in instead of parallel park, and you're only taking up 4.5 feet. So you can get 2 or 3 of these in a normal parallel parking space. So that increases your capacity tremendously for parking when you can just kind of drive right in. And so instead of getting 10 vehicles in this parking spot, if that's for your apartment complex, you can get in 20 vehicles in the same space using these. They're going to have mobile apps. You don't have a key. Your phone opens up the door, locks the door, turns on the engine, and can be used in personalized, and so all your security is going to be based off your phone in driving these things, including even use your phone to put that up front and communicate with the car, and that becomes part of your screen up front that you're using for transport, or your mapping systems and your speed, your location, any other apps you may have. So your phone is going to become part of the car when you just pop it right into its port, which gives you rideshare capacities. I can go ahead and buy one of these, put it in my driveway, and share it with my neighbor. It's all by phone app. So if I've got apartments down, HUD housing down the street from me with 100 people living in it, with parking is a problem for all the vehicles that they now have. But heck, with the rideshare, you can have one of these for every 5 or 6 apartments. And then the folks there could not have their car, but when they need a car, they can just go ahead, schedule it in using their mobile app. Say, I'd like to use the car between this time and that time to go to the store. They go ahead and they sign in, and they, with their phone, can open up the car, start the car, drive down, drive back, and they're not allowed to get in and out or drive the car when it's not their turn. So the rideshare capacities and capabilities in neighborhoods increased tremendously. So one car in each neighborhood, each block, could be there and share it with the entire block, have it in their driveway, having even two of these where a normal car would park. And you can actually have a whole neighborhood rideshare capability. They will have the same thing as the Tesla has for the auto drive capabilities, autopilot type things will be in all these to help out those folks who are getting around. And so in combination with the rideshare, having the map systems in there pre-laid out and be able to get there and help you get there is going to be a tremendous technological advantage to making these work in our marketplace. For production, some of these cars, a lot of the parts are now going to be 3D printed. That's one of the goals they have, and to minimize the number of parts. If they're 3D printed, you can customize them. Say, I want to order a car, and within a few days, they can assemble these pretty quickly and get them to you. Whatever color, if you want to, whatever design you want in them can be layered in, because some of these 3D printed can be opted on an individual basis. So you can customize them pretty easily in the production line. And a lot of these, their goal is to get under a total of 100 parts for assembly. So instead of all these nuts and bolts and things, these are snapped together parts, a lot of them. With the 3D printing of all the hinges and the like, which are pretty much snapped together. Of course, there's a metal frame for all safety. There's metal frames, there's even airbags. It has everything a car has for safety in it. But the total parts that assembly line has, less than 100 parts, they can be assembled in a short period of time in a customized way. And the price tag that their goal is to get these all under $12,000 per vehicle, so that they become easily purchased as your second vehicle and maybe you have a choice to get around town. So other capacities, here is the Akimoto that's based here up in, I think this up in Oregon, Eugene, Oregon. They're being built. They can be customized a little bit, but you can have a two-seaters here, one behind the other. And these can actually go freeway speeds. Or you can put it into, this is a deliverator that is designed for that, and also for emergency vehicles. You know, just put a emergency tech in here with all sorts of supplies that they might need in here, and at least get to somewhere, maybe not carry a patient back to the hospital, but they can do on-site care with these emergency vehicles. And so there's a lot of marketing to be done here, not just for tourism, for delivery, but folks, or even the police that are going around town that just need to be city and not freeway based, then they can actually get around town pretty easily on these vehicles. So is this going to be your rideshare that you're going to buy and work with your neighbors? Is this possibly your second or even your third car that you have, because it's going to be cheaper to run than any of your other transport vehicles for the most part? Okay, so sharing the road issues is going to be starting in. So if you have, here's what the Helix vehicle is only 3 foot wide. So can we redesign our lanes down the road? Let's say 10, 15 years from now, when we have enough of these narrow, smaller vehicles on our roadways, can we add in a narrow lane onto our freeways or even our major roads, so that we can, instead of having 4 lanes, we have 5 or 6 lanes in the same space? And that would make it much more efficient. You can transport 35 to 40% more cars could be actually, and vehicles could actually transport down the same road if we have narrower vehicles and narrower lanes. So if we add in narrow lanes and say, hey, special lanes, just like we do for our multiple passenger vehicles now, this is a possibility here to be thinking about, as how do we redesign our roads for the narrow vehicles. And then when we have bicycles now with pedestrians, even on high traffic areas, they've even now divided out the bicycles and the pedestrians. So pedestrians, even their directions, their arrows for directions and arrows for even the bicycle directions in a wide enough path that people can go on. This is close to 12 foot wide, so you need 3 foot, and 3 foot is 6 foot there, even 3 foot, 6 foot over here. So a 12 foot wide path to get both directions separated with the faster vehicles, bicycles, and electrified, and a little bit faster compared to pedestrians. So are we going to create more styles of lanes of transit for our different speeds? So now sharing the road, I'll go over some of the issues that are involved. So are bicycles going to be allowed on pedestrian paths? Or are we going to call it a pedestrian path or a bicycle path? Or are pedestrians allowed on a bicycle path? Who's going to have the right of way? What rules are we going to have? how wide are they, how good a repair are they going to be in, and how do we run all this? So we're still learning how to operate, and I think right now we're even my wife is on a bicycle on a path. She had a little accident because she didn't want to run into people. They didn't quite move over. They weren't paying attention, and so yeah. So there's starting to be a little irritation happening between pedestrians and bicyclists, and even on our paths of bicyclists versus electric bikes. There's been some controversy on for mountain biking. Crowd has gone after it and discussed, okay, should mountain bikes be electrified and allowed on the same paths with the same speeds there, and are they more destructive? We do have larger, faster e-transports now on our sidewalks or roads or bike lanes or paths or trails, and they're all passing these slower bikes and they're pedestrians, and they're even, and to do so on our streets, they have to move into the car lanes. So to pass somebody on a slower bike, on my electric bike, I have to move into that car lane, kind of look behind me, make sure there's no cars there to pass them. So that's another concern that I have with my electric bike, trying to pass up other folks that are not as fast. With the coming of bike pods, trikes, and micro cars that can fit into bike lanes, fit into car lanes, and these hybrid vehicles that are in the middle of their speeds and their distances, their widths. So where do they fit? Bike lanes, car lanes? Where are we going to put them, and where are they going to be allowed? And can we mix it up a little bit? How are we going to do that? Right now, our roads are designed for 3 transports. You can walk on your sidewalk, bike in your bike lane, drive in your car lane on the road. And right now we have those 3 separated. But these mid-gap vehicles, where are they going to go? And I think that's the main problem for them in their marketplace and acceptance, because they don't feel comfortable on the sidewalks. They're not comfortable in the bike lanes. They're not comfortable in the car lane. And that's why I gave up my scooter, my electric scooter, because the cars were passing me and a bit honking at me and irritated with me as they were passing me, because they could go a little bit faster than I could on the car lane. So we have to see, change our attitudes, change the way we drive, change our rules of the road for these vehicles. Another problem we come up with is the quiet motors. So if you're an electric bike coming up on pedestrians, and we need to say, oh, maybe 10-mile-an-hour limit on some, maybe even 5-mile-an-hour limit in some places for any bicyclist coming through. But with electric bikes, that's kind of you forget how fast you're going. So when you're coming up on pedestrians, they don't hear you coming up on them because your electric motor is pretty quiet. And so you have to ring bells, let them know that you're coming, call out. And so there's been a few conflicts out there. Okay, so we have to work on our education, our right-of-way. Who has the right-of-way? Is the paths being designed more? Is the pedestrians have the full right-of-way? And the signage that's now in parks, you have horses and bicycles and pedestrians, and there's signage out there and rules, but we need to have a better education as to who has the right-of-way and what are these rules, and uphill, downhill, and around corners. So these smaller, lower, slower vehicles, city streets, how are we going to handle those? Can we limit the speed on all city roads? How about limiting the speeds on all trails and have maximums out there and tell everybody, hey, don't drive so fast. Everybody goes 30 miles an hour maximum down your road, even though you can go 40. Are we going to do that? Just as a note, wind becomes an issue over 50 miles an hour. Anytime you go over 50, just the impact of wind increases your inefficiency, increases the amount of energy you need to use up to 20% of your efficiency when you start going over 50 miles per hour. That's where aerodynamics are really important on these electric vehicles, so even at lower winds, lower speeds, and lower winds. So in higher speeds and higher winds, maybe we should tell everybody, hey, not to go 70 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour down the freeway anymore. That's not being allowed. It'd be nice to get there on time, but hey, let's save some gas. Let's not, because it takes extra gas to go at these faster speeds. Also, just how are we going to change lanes, both on our major roads and on the freeway? So these gap vehicles, which are going to be a little bit slower, maybe a little bit narrower, they got smaller wheels. So how are we going to deal with potholes? how are we going to keep the construction up on these? And are there going to be any issues with safety? So is there some of these vehicles that we had, like the Jeeps, especially if they're weight pushed up a height, can turn over. So a lot of concern with these trikes. Will they turn over? And they're all being designed so far to be as safe as four-wheel vehicles. But heck, it's still things we need to learn more about and share and get educated about. Now there's infrastructure issues up here. So for your infrastructure, the questions come up, do e-bikes, especially e-mountain bikes, damage trails, the dirt trails going up and down? And so there were lots of complaints, but research is they've actually done some research already on this, and the electric mountain bikes cause no more injury than regular mountain bikes on the trails. So I think that's been resolved at this point. We have narrow e-transport, means smaller lanes. Can we make more one small lane, narrow lane, and allow these narrower vehicles as a special lane on the freeway, just like we do with the HOVs? Also, a lot of these vehicles will not have so much metal in them. And so a lot of our road detectors are based on metal, especially your iron. And if they're made of aluminum and other composites that are not magnetically oriented, not having iron, then they're not being detected. Like my scooter, I would sit there for 4 lights trying to make a turn, make a left-hand turn, and the light system would not detect my vehicle. So that's why we are going to be moving toward cameras, and I understand the cameras are getting better and better for detecting a vehicle, including bicycles and pedestrians. And so camera use is probably going to be more dominant rather than using metal detection for is the vehicle there and what the traffic is like. So that's the system we need to start moving toward, is a camera-based artificial intelligence to kind of detect what's going on and then figure out what to do. We're going to need charging stations everywhere for all these electric vehicles. And do we really need 440s everywhere, even 220s? Can we get by with 110s for these smaller vehicles? 110 is plenty capacity for an overnight charge on these smaller vehicles. So even the 4-wheel mini cars, you only need a 110. You don't even need a 220. You don't need the fast charge. They will charge up in 3 to 5 hours overnight, be full capacity, ready to go in the morning. And even if you stop for lunch somewhere, they will get at least 50% capacity within 30 minutes, an hour at most. So easy to put in 110s compared to putting in 220s or 440s everywhere. So we might be thinking about when we put in charge stations, especially multiple charge stations and multifamily units, maybe we can start thinking about putting in just a set of 110s out there rather than 220s or 440s, which are much more costly to put into the parking lots. We also have handicap e-transport that's constantly improving. They're going to be increasing in use, especially we have a older population that's growing with this bubble of baby boomers that are now going more and more into electrification in their transport, getting used to it, liking it. And so you're going to see an increase in use in all these vehicles, and they have the money and the capacity to purchase these, even at the higher end ones. So there's lots of Teslas now being purchased. And so we need to increase the awareness and hopefully increase the marketplace and awareness of these vehicles on the road for all the folks that are either handicapped or getting a little more elderly, a little bit slower in their reaction times. So, and then we're talking about all these plug-in vehicles. Now the Tesla has this whole 440 system set up for these fast charges that they have patented, that's special to them, and they're able to patent it and own it all because they have the ability to supercharge quickly in their vehicles. But should they have total control over all these stations across the entire US and basically shut everybody else and have total monopoly on all these charge stations that are superchargers? This is something we need to hold them to, put their feet to the fire and say, no, this is monopolizing all the charge stations around the US. So either they take their charge station and make it available to everybody, and everybody standardizes to their supercharge station, or maybe have them say, okay, let's put in a second station next to them. They'd be required to add in a second one right next to them that's also a standard 440 that all the other 440 superchargers could use, or the 220s or 110s. So Tesla would be required to actually put an equivalent of three or more chargers right next to theirs. So if any car shows up, yeah, they can charge up at any place on any station. So we need to figure out how to manage the whole Tesla monopoly on supercharge stations. We have grid capacity. As a volume of e-transport increases, right now lots of folks are concerned about how we're moving and electrifying, even trying to, in our buildings, removing gas. Our methane gas is currently being used in most buildings, but for heating purposes and for cooking, but that's shifting to electric. So as we do that, that's increasing the capacity and the volume required. And then we add cars and transports, and the amount of energy we actually use in gasoline every day transporting around in our vehicles is huge, huge compared to our uses of electricity now inside our homes. So getting our transport system converted to electricity, this grid capacity is going to be a critical factor. I'm even hearing from friends that, gee, what's going to happen if someone runs into a pole and I have no electricity? My heat goes out. I'm going to freeze to death in my house. So there is some concerns about going 100% electrical. Now, funding rideshare systems. Now, in a neighborhood, whether it's a private person running it, a little business, or whether it's the city that is actually going to help sponsor some of the neighbor rideshare systems, funding, grants, and the like, can we develop a whole new concept of how we do ride shares within our cities? Can we use the neighborhood rideshare program? So instead of having parking along every street and huge parking lots, can we put so many of these in and have it become so popular that we can cut our total vehicles down, because the vehicles are only used less than 10%, maybe 5% of the time by any of their actual drivers. So yeah, this is a huge inefficiency that everybody has their own vehicle and it can park it out there. Huge infrastructure based on this one person, one car ownership system that we've developed. So this is a whole game changer when we're talking about rideshare systems in our neighborhoods. And that's one of the things I would like to really promote is these possibilities. And maybe I'm hoping to do it before long if I get the right technology and the right vehicle and help my neighbors out and make a little profit. And that includes integrating this rideshare system, not just in the neighborhoods, not just at the tram station, but a citywide rideshare system so that everybody can get around with public transport, can just get in a vehicle, and there's enough of them floating around here and there, coming back and forth, and then that we can move them as we need to. Some of the cities are learning about how to do ride shares with their bicycles, with their scooters, and as we develop awareness and education and build our usage of these ride share systems that are basically bicycles and scooters, start moving up into cars, mini cars for our public transport. And that again is a huge transformation that could happen within the next 10 to 20 years easily if we decide to go in that direction. So what will we do? How are we going to add in these two levels of transport, these gap vehicles in here, these upgraded bicycles and these electrified mini cars and transport systems? And what are we going to do moving from our three level, our walking, our bicycle lanes, and our car lanes? How can we transform that and to include this other electrical transport that is going to be our real future? That's why we're going to have to go if we're going to fight climate change. We've got to move into this electrified gap area as our main transport system. So that's the question I have, and hopefully I can motivate you to think about how we're going to do this transformation in our whole society. Thank you for your time.